You find that you're being kept out of hell, and you do not see God's hand in this. But look at other things, like your good health, your care of your own life, the means that you use for your own preservation. But indeed, these things are nothing. If God should withdraw his hand from you, those who are unsaved, they would no more keep you from falling into hell than air can keep and hold a person up that's suspended by it. Your wickedness makes you heavy as lead and adds a downward tendency with great weight and pressure towards hell. And if God should let you go, you would immediately sink and swiftly descend and plunge into bottomless gulf in your good health and your own care and prudence and best plans for salvation. And all your righteousness would have no more influence to hold you out of hell than a spider's web would have to stop a falling rock. You're unsaved. There are black clouds of God's wrath that are hanging over your heads, full of dreadful storm, a big thunder, and were it not for the restraining hand of God, it would immediately burst forth upon you. The sovereign pleasure of God for the present halts this destroying action. Otherwise it would come with fury, and your destruction would come like a whirlwind and would be like chaff in the summer. The wrath of God is like great waters that are dammed for the present. They increase more and more and rise higher and higher till an outlet is given. And the longer the stream is stopped, the more rapid and mighty is its course once it's let loose. It's true that judgment against your evil works has not been executed before. The floods, God's vengeance have been withheld, but your guilt in the meantime is constantly increasing. And you are every day storing up more wrath. The waters against you are constantly rising and growing more and more mighty, and there is nothing but the mere pleasure of God that holds those judgment waters back. They are unwilling to be stopped and press hard to go forward. If God should withdraw his hand from the floodgate, it would immediately open, and the fiery floods of the fierceness and wrath of God would indeed rush forth with fury, and would come upon you with omnipotent power. And if your strength were 10,000 times greater than it is, 10,000 times greater than the strength of the stoutest, sturdiest devil in hell, you would not be able to withstand God's judgment. The bow of God's wrath is bent against every unsaved person in this congregation. The arrow of judgment is made ready on the string, and justice is pointing that arrow at your heart and strains the bow. And it is nothing but the mere pleasure of God, and that of an angry God, without any promise or obligation at all, that keeps the arrow 1 second from being made drunk with your blood. Thus all of you that have never had a change of heart, by the mighty power of God, all of you that were never born again and never made new creatures and raised from being dead in sin to a new state and never experienced life, all of you that have not given your hearts to Christ are now in the hands of an angry God. This God is holding you over the pit of hell right now, much like one holds a spider or some detestable object over fire. God detests your sin and is dreadfully provoked. His wrath burns you like fire. He looks upon you as worthy of nothing else but to be simply thrown into fire. You have offended him with your sin, and it is nothing but his hand that holds you from falling into the fire at any moment. It is ascribed to nothing else that you did not go to hell last night, and that you were allowed to wake up again in this world after you closed your eyes to sleep. And there is no other reason to be given why you have not dropped into hell since you arose this morning, but that God's hand has held you up. There is no other reason to be given why you have not gone to hell since you have sat here in this church, provoking his pure eyes with your sinful, wicked manner of attending his solemn worship. Yes, there is nothing else that is be given as a reason why you do not very this moment, right now, go to hell. Oh, sinners, consider the dreadful danger you are in. It is a great furnace of wrath that God holds you over, a bottomless pit full of the fire of wrath that you are held over in the hand of that God whose wrath is provoked and incensed as much against you as against many of the damned who already sit in hell. You hang right now by a slender thread, with the flames of divine wrath flashing about and ready every moment to singe it and burn it apart. And you right now, unsaved, have no interest in Christ. And nothing to lay hold of to save yourself. Nothing to keep off the flames of wrath. Nothing of your own, nothing that you have ever done. Nothing that you can do to induce God to spare you one moment. Consider this. You that are here and are currently unsaved and continue to walk with God, God will execute the fury of his anger against you. Just as God did the Israelites, he will inflict you with wrath and not pity. When God looks upon the inexpressible circumstances of your case and sees your torment to be so vastly disproportional to your strength, and sees how your poor soul is crushed and sinks down, as it were, in infinite gloom, he will have no compassion on you. He will not withhold his executions of wrath, or in the least lighten his hand, and there shall be no moderation for you, no mercy for you who are unsaved. Nor will God stop his destroying wind. God will have no welfare for your being if you remain in sin. Nothing shall be withheld from you, because it is too intense for you there. In Ezekiel 8:18, we read these words, "Therefore I will deal with them in anger. I will not look on them with pity or spare them. Although they shout in my ears, I will not listen to them. Thus it will be with you who are currently unsaved if you continue to walk without Christ. Your torment will be eternal." How dreadful is the state of those that daily and hourly are in danger of this kind of mercy and wrath. But this is the dismal case of every soul in this congregation that has not been born again, however moral or strict, sober or religious they may otherwise be. O you that would consider it, whether you be young or old, I have no doubt that there are many in this congregation now hearing this sermon that will be thrown into hell for all eternity. We do not know who they are, or where they sit, or what thoughts they might now have. It may be that they're now at ease and hear these things without much conviction and are now flattering themselves that they're not the persons who are going to end up in hell. They think that they will somehow escape. If we knew that there was one person, just one person, in this whole congregation that was to be subject to this misery, what an awful thing that would be to think of. If we knew that who that person was, what an awful sight it would be to see that person. How might all the rest of the congregation lift up a mournful and bitter cry over this unsaved soul? But alas, instead of just one person that's unsaved in this congregation, there are many. And there are many who sit in this congregation right now who will undoubtedly remember this opportunity to give themselves to Christ. And they will undoubtedly remember this sermon as they find themselves someday sitting in hell. And there are some who will end up in hell in a very short time. even before this year is out. And it would be no wonder if some persons that are now sitting here will end up in hell at the end of this day. Those of you who continue to walk in wickedness, those of you who continue to deny Christ, you'll end up